Hello, my name is Greg Lewis. Today, I'm talking to you from my new podcast. Are you related to Harry or Meghan? This podcast is about genealogy. And are you related to someone famous like Harry and Meghan or George Washington? Well, we'll find out as we're going to go to step one. And with me now is Matt, and he's going to be discussing his heritage. Matt?
Hi, my name is Matt. Um, I'm no expert in genealogy, so I'll just throw that out there. Um, yeah, thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to go over some of these questions that you have for me.
Matt, where do you begin your search on for your family? So, can you tell us how?
Okay. Well, for me, it started with asking family, immediate family, such as your parents, asking your aunts and uncles, and asking your grandparents if possible, uh, and just really kind of tracing that information back. And it's important to remember that time is going to be your best friend in this scenario because sometimes things take time. Time will allow information to mature, in my opinion, from other people, and the truth always has a way of surfacing. It's just a matter of waiting. So you can always expect time to be on your side.
N- Now, Matt, did you use one of those genealogy websites like Family Tree DNA or Ancestry or 23andMe?
No, no, I didn't. I haven't always been told, being an indigenous person, um, by my family, that we don't really want to provide that kind of private information, only because you don't know how that information is going to be used. And in the day and age where we see a lot of things happen within this world, within this country, um, what I would want to do is at most keep my DNA private as much as possible. And that could be viewed as superstition or ridiculous or maybe even insane. But if you look at history, let's consider all the people that had experiments taking place on them and look where they're at now.
Mm.
We remember, you know, testing on people in the early, I think it was the 50s.
Yes, the TC, the TC, yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's something that we want to factor in. And of course, I'm not willing to share that. I'm not looking to be, um, drug companies' guinea pig. So ultimately, no, I have not tested my DNA. I had not gone that route. So I decided to view everything from a paper trail. Um, that had been set up through Ancestry.com, which family has utilized, uploading documents of birth certificates and, of course, immigration paper as an Indigenous person. Um, that's information that needed to be tracked during the early years of the US to identify who was an Indigenous person and who was considered an illegal immigrant. But being Yaqui and originating from the Yaqui Valley of Mexico, one of the things that we have to factor in now that we have a reservation in the US is during that time, that information would still need to be shared, like passports, immigration, and so forth, if family members were going to be traveling between the reservation in Arizona and the reservation in Mexico.
To me, the process of this DNA test can take over about 8 or 6 weeks. Sometimes that's a long time. If you have the patience, I would say do it because the paperwork is good, but when you have the DNA, it's even more fuller, and you'll find out more of your family history that way.
Yeah, I think the DNA testing is a fantastic resource for people who have an interest in going in depth with their lineage to see how far they can trace their bloodline back. Realistically, I know that humankind, the human race, can be traced as far back as scientific Adam and scientific Eve in Africa. I understand that a lot of the lineage had split off from Africa into different parts of the world at various different times. Uh, I think that if you want to utilize, the DNA apps or DNA websites to get that information through that curious, yeah, definitely go ahead and do so. And there's definitely some benefits to that, especially for those who may be adopted.
Wow. So if I'm adopted, how am I going to find out who my mother and father were?
Well, I realize that the adoption process can be very difficult to obtain any information if you're able to obtain any information. Of course, I know the most logical route to go with researching that data, trying to find out that information, is to go to an adoption agency in which the person had been adopted from and see if they're willing to provide information, assuming both parties want to have that information shared during that time, meaning biological parents want their child to have that information when they turn 18 or not. So it can be tricky, sure, but I think that the next best route could very well be DNA testing. Um, it could be one of those things where if the parent does not want to be found, you know, the parent is just essentially shooting themselves in the foot if they do a DNA test out of sheer curiosity, forgetting that they had a child out there, living with a different family, and they can shoot themselves in the foot with that. Um, be sure to be careful of the information, of course, that you find. Um, my rule of thumb is don't ask the question that you don't want the answer to. So if there's pieces of information that you don't want the answer to, then that may not be a ideal route for you.
Now, Matt, you said you're Native American, right?
Yes.
But why is it so hard that other ethnic groups have it's much more of a challenge to find, to trace their heritage as far as you can?
Okay. Well, that's a fantastic question. Um, and you may or may not remember this little thing called the genocide of Native Americans. Um, a lot of adults, parents, elders had been murdered during the time of settlers within the U.S. And yes, I'm going to refer to them as murders because was there a real reason to murder humans? No, there was not. So, with that being said, during those times and that genocide, um, you can view the native tribe as a giant puzzle, just like people in Africa. It's a giant puzzle, and during the times of genocide and slavery, it was almost like these puzzles were tossed into the air, and now we're missing puzzle pieces. Certain areas have certain information that I may have never had before. Other tribes may have information that another tribe would be looking for and not know it, or just simply the information is missing. We think about how those who had come from Africa as slaves lost a huge portion of their life, of their bloodline, their history, and can no longer be traced. other than bloodline, other than DNA testing. You can test it as far back as that. Sure, yes. But that also doesn't mean that that's who we are. We are who we are. We make choices every day of who we want to be. But some of those missing pieces are also very important to the ethnic group. And without those pieces, it can become rather difficult to trace down the information that you're looking for. For all you know, you could have someone who is related to you who could be royalty, could be a celebrity of some kind. I mean, there's been talks about certain celebrities being identified as being from the same tribe I am, but I don't know how true that is.
Hmm. Yes, I have discovered there's two resources. One is called the Freeman Bureau for African Americans, and DAWS, DAWES, for Native Americans. So if you utilize those resources, you might find whom you're looking for. Who you looking for? But thanks to having Matt here, and thank you for coming on today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It was fantastic having this conversation, and I definitely look forward to working with you some more, seeing what happens. I want to find out some more information from you.
I hope we will. And folks, we Matt gave you some vital information if you're Native American, and and I will give you more information about my heritage and others if you're interested in having your heritage expound on this podcast. Just contact me, Greg Lewis 517 at gmail.com. And I'll see you next time as we explore this huge thing called genealogy. So until next time, for Matt, bye bye.